Welcome to the session FDOT Civil 3D Labeling. My name is Mike Rock and I work for the Florida Department of Transportation in the Engineering CAD Systems Office. This session is focused on examining concepts of labels and label styles. We will focus on label styles and the creation of label styles, how to use the label style composer and its various settings. We'll also look at overriding individual labels with other label styles, how to create new label sets, and also how to create and use expressions. We'll look at style control and display properties of label styles that are included with the FDOT State Kit. We'll also look at the manipulation of label location settings. The software prerequisites for this class is to have the most current or latest version of the FDOT Civil 3D State Kit installed. This will ensure that you have the label styles that are demonstrated in this session. Our session objectives for this class is styles in general. We'll learn how aspects of software is controlled through the Prospector and Settings tab in the Toolspace palette. Then we'll look at object styles. We'll explore the collection of object styles in the Settings tab. We'll look at label styles. We'll discuss and learn the many factors that go into the creation of label styles, such as how to use a label style composer, the creation of label styles, and how to create and use expressions. Next, we'll go to label sets. We'll look at how a label set is a combined individual label styles that are combined together to make a set. Then finally, we'll look at label location, applying labels, and the location manipulation. First, let's talk about styles in general and where they're located. Every aspect of Civil 3D is controlled through the tool space. Settings and styles are stored in the drawing itself. Civil 3D does not store data in an external database as in other previous Autodesk software products. To get to the tool space and explore some of the styles in your drawing, go to the Home ribbon, and in the Palette section, you will find the Toolspace icon. Once the Toolspace is launched, you will notice a set of tabs on the right. The Prospector tab is a collection of data objects that are present in the active DWG file. The collection of objects are in a tree-like structure with an overall collection category and object data within those collections. Once the Toolspace is launched, you will notice a series of tabs on the right. Prospector tab contains a collection of data objects that are in the active DWG file. The collections are organized in a tree-like structure with overall collection categories and the object data within those collections. The primary collection display includes points, point groups, surfaces, sites, pipe networks, corridors, assemblies, and subassemblies. To access any of the data within these categories, simply expand the collection to expose the object data. The next tab is the Settings tab. This tab is a collection of styles that Civil 3D utilizes to control objects, labels, tables, commands, and other settings. On this tab, styles are organized for different object types. You can modify these object types and then save them as a template for future use or for developing your standards. To access any of these styles in the command within the Settings tab, simply expand each collection item. Take, for example, the alignment. When we expose the alignment tree category, we can see that we have object types, object styles, and label styles in that category. So what is a style? It basically defines how Civil 3D objects look in your drawing, whether it's in plan mode or production mode. It also simplifies the process of knowing where to go to change objects and labels. If we were to right-click on the surface properties in our drawing, we see that we can change our styles from there. Same thing for alignments. If we select alignments and right-click, we can go into alignment properties and change our styles, corridor properties, subassembly properties, or match line properties. Once you select that object and right-click and go into properties, like alignment properties for example, every property has a style field with a style assigned to that object. So since a style is now a property, rather than a series of procedures put together, users can simply assign a predefined style to their object to meet FDOT requirements instead of following pages of procedures and workbooks trying to get a particular object to look a certain way. Along with the way an object style looks, we also have a way to label objects known as label styles. So here we're going to discuss and learn the many factors that go into the creation of a label. Before you begin creating a style, ask yourself a few questions. What is it that I want to label? What type of object is it? How do I want the label to look like or be displayed? Do I want the label to be in plan or model space readable? So down at the bottom you can see the three examples. We have a label style or label set for our alignment that shows tick marks and stationing. In the middle example we have some contour lines that show major and minor elevations. And on the right hand side we may have a match line style that will show in our plan and profile drawings for match line stationing. All these labels are created using the label style composer. So what is the label style composer? Well, the Label Style Composer is a collection of tabs that controls label creations and display characteristics. It is consistent throughout the entire Civil 3D program, making the interface easy to navigate and simplify the creation process. You can edit the label settings at the drawing label level, the object level, and the label style level. If you look at the example on the bottom, you can see that the Label Style Composer comprises of 5 tabs: Information tab, the General tab, Layout, Drag States, and Summary. So let's look at in greater detail how each one of these tabs work. First, you have the Information tab. This is the tab where you give your style a name. You can also give it a description of how that style is being used. Also, when the style is being created, it also shows who created that style, when it was created, and if it was modified, it shows who last modified it and the date it was modified on. The name, created by, date must be filled out, but the description field does not need to be filled out. Since it's there, why not go ahead and use it? This makes it easier to identify what that particular style may be used for. Next, we have the General tab. You use this tab to specify the text style, layer visibility, and the orientation of your label. FDOT text styles have been applied to all FDOT label style. The FDOT fonts are annotative. What this means is that if the drawing scale changes, the text size changes accordingly. The 3 main categories under the General tab are Label, Behavior, and Plan Readability. The Label section shows the text style that's being assigned to that label, or whether or not the label is visible in the drawing, and also the layer that is assigned this label style. The Behavior category specifies the orientation reference of the label. The Plan Readability specifies a text rotation to ensure all text components and labels can be read easily in plan view. The next tab is the Layout tab. The Layout component properties define the appearance, location, and orientation of that particular component. The Layout tab has 3 main areas: the component name, the anchor component, and the anchor point. For the component name, you can use an arrangement of different components to create an appropriate label, such as text, lines, an existing block, or a directional arrow that you want to include in your label style. Use the red X to delete a component. All the properties configured are applied to each component separately. The anchor component area allows the user to match a component to a feature, or object, or another component. The anchor point defines the justification of the label that it is applied to. Additionally, on the Layout tab, we have contents, text height, rotation angle, attachment, XY offsets, and miscellaneous object properties. The text height represents the text size in plotted inches. The rotation angle is based upon the anchor component, anchor point, and text attachment. Attachment defines the justification of the label that it is applied to. XY offsets are used to modify the offset distances by applying a plus or minus value in inches. For miscellaneous object properties, by layer allows the layer manager to control color and line weight based on the layer specified on the General tab. Finally, on the Layout tab, we have Contents located under Text. Click on the value cell to the right of Contents to access the Text Component Editor. The Text Component Editor is a collection of object data values used in labeling. The values obtained from objects create an appropriate label. Text may be entered in conjunction with a property value. The modified parameters associated with the chosen property type will change accordingly to the object that it's being associated to. You can delete the current property of the preview window first, then select the new property from the pull-down menu. After adjusting the modifier values, select the arrow icon to place the property component in the preview window. Next, we have the Drag State tab. You use this tab to define properties for labels when the labels are being dragged away from their original insertion point. For the leader type, you can choose an arrowhead for the leader from the list. You can specify the arrowhead size, whether the leader is visible when you drag from its position. You can also specify if you would like a straight leader line or a curved leader line when the label is being dragged. You also have Drag State Component. This is where you choose how a label content is displayed after it is dragged from its default position. After the label is dragged from its default position, you can have a border or a background mask or different text height appear once the label is dragged. Last, you have the Summary tab. This is where you use to review all the settings from the Information, General, Layout, and Drag State tab all in one location. This tab is useful once you become more familiar with the various settings of a label. Now that we've reviewed some of the settings for the Label Style Composer, let's review some examples. Here we have 3 different examples we're going to look at. The first example is we're going to examine how to add a border or a background mask and change a line type for a single major and minor contour. Next, we'll examine how to create and assign labels and label sets to an alignment. Finally, we'll look at creating an FDOT station offset elevation label style using an object reference text component based off of an alignment Civil 3D object. So here you can see we have a drawing that has a surface defined in it with some major and minor contours, but the contours do not have any labels on them yet. So let's examine how to first place labels in our drawing. If you go up to the top, you have a series of ribbons. Let's go to the Annotate ribbon, and under Annotate we have on the left hand side Labels and Tables. Choose the Add Labels option. What this does, this brings us up a dialog box that allows us to choose the feature that we want to label, the label type, and various other label settings. So in this example, like I said, we want to label the surface. So for feature, I'm going to click on the down arrow and choose surface. For the label type, let's do contour single. And then for major contour label styles, we're going to choose label the existing major and label existing minor. Next, to place our labels, we're going to click Add. If you look at the command line, it's asking you to select the contour line to label. I'm just going to bring my cursor over the contour I want to label, left click, and it places a label. It'll place one for the major and the minor contour. Right click to end the command. Now if we zoom in, we can tell that this label isn't quite right. As you can see, the contour itself passes through the back of the contour label and it's clearly visible. So in this case, let's go ahead and examine how we can add a background mask to it and also add a border that goes around it. So to do this, let's go to the Home tab and launch our tool space. I'm going to go ahead and close out of our Add Labels dialog box. Let's go to the settings and find this particular label style. So since we're labeling a surface, we know the first place we want to look at is under our surface category. Next, since it's a label style, we're going to expand the label style category, and also we want to expand contour. Once you expand contour, you can see that we have two styles that are being used. We know that they're being used by the little yellow flag in the top right hand corner of our icon. So first let's edit our major style. So I'm going to select the style, right click and choose Edit. This brings up our label style composer dialog box that we discussed earlier. What we want to do is we want to alter the way the layout of this style looks. So I'm going to go over to the Layout tab. If you look on the left, you have different properties such as General, Text, and Border. Well, right now our border is shown as false. So we actually do want to show a border for this label style. So I'm going to click on the false, pull down menu, and select True. We also want to show a background mask because we want to mask out the contour line that's currently being shown going through our label. So for background mask, I'm going to change false to true. And since we have border visibility turned on, what type of border do we want to show going around our contour label? We have the option for rectangular, rectangular with rounded corners, or circular border. Let's choose rounded rectangular. So this is fairly simple edits that we're going to make to this label style for our surface. So I'm not going to make any further changes at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and click Apply and click OK and take a look at our current label. Now if you notice, the borders around this label appear to be dashed. We want this to be a solid line style or a continuous line style border going around our label. So let's take a look at some additional settings. I'm going to go back to my style, choose Edit, and let's take a look at the layer that this label is on. So here you can see that the layer currently being used is contour major _EP. So let's take a look and see what line type this layer is using. So I'm going to click OK and go to my layers dialog box and find that layer, contour major EP. And we can see that right now we have a DGN1 line type style applied to it. So let's go ahead and change that to a continuous line type. So I'm going to select continuous, click OK, close out of this dialog box, and now you can see we have a continuous line type style going around our label. So I'll go ahead and do the additional style for existing minor. Select that style, right click, choose Edit, go to my Layout tab. I do want to show the visibility of the border. I want the border to be rounded rectangular, and I do want it to have a background mask behind it. I'm going to go to the General tab, to look and see what layer is being used, which is contour minor underscore EP. I'm going to click apply and OK. We do need to change the line type. So I'm going to go back to my layers, scroll up till I find contour minor EP. Again, look at the line type. It's a DGN1, which is a dashed line type. So I'm going to select that and change that to continuous. I'm going to exit out of here, and now you can see we have nice clean labels applied to our contours. Also, as far as the placement is concerned, you can always go back and select the label itself and use these grips to manipulate the placement of the label. Next, let's take a look at how to assign labels and label sets for alignment. So if you look at the screen grab on the left hand side, you can see that we have label sets. Under label sets, we have individual component label styles, such as station for major, minor, geometry, profile geometry, station equation, design speed, super elevation, and critical point. In the middle screen grab, you can see how we can take those label styles and can combine them into what's known as a label set. On the right hand screen grab, you can see how you can go into a label set and apply settings to objects. So let's take a look at our alignment and examine how we can assign different label sets to our alignment. So in our drawing, you can see that we currently have an alignment that goes through the middle of our drawing, but currently it has no labels assigned to it. So this time I'm going to add labels to it, but I'm going to do it a little differently than going to our annotate ribbon and using the add labels option. This time I'm going to just select the alignment, right click, and we're going to choose edit alignment label. In the alignment labels dialog box, we can see that currently there's no labels that are being assigned to this alignment. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at the type. The type of label that we currently want to add is a type for major stations. When we select that type, we can go over to the right and choose the major station alignment label type. So in this case, we're just going to do an FDOT full 100 plus 00 label. Next, we're going to choose add to add it to our alignment. The next step, we're going to go down and we're going to choose minor stations. What type of label style do you want to use for our minor station label? I'm going to click on the down arrow. We're just going to use an FDOT minor station tick and choose add. Once you add these two, you can come through here and you can change different settings like the increments for the ticks and also the increments for your major station. To add these labels, we can click OK. It closes out the dialog box and adds our minor station labels, our major station labels, with our increment tick marks. Let's go back and look at how to add a label set to our alignment. So again, I'm going to select the alignment, right click, and choose edit alignment labels. I'm going to choose the labels that I want to delete and come up here and click on the red X and it removes them. If you notice down here on the bottom, you have what's known as import a label set. When you click on this, basically what you have is a name given to a set of major and minor label styles that have been combined into a named label set. So I'm going to go down the list here and let's choose full station major 100 feet with minor 50-foot tick mark. I'm going to select that and click OK, and it basically just gives us a list of all of the individual label styles in that label set. So we can see here we have major station, it's going to label it at increments of 100 feet, and minor station tick marks that are 50 feet. We're also going to label geometry point, station equations, and design speeds as well. This is a lot easier using this method, importing label sets, than importing each individual label style. So I'm just going to click OK, and now we can see we have a little bit more detail in our alignment label. To view the alignment labels and the styles and settings, again, on your tool space tab, go to the settings tab. We're going to scroll till we find alignments, expand it. We have alignment styles. These are all the different alignment styles of the way our alignment object looks. We also have label styles. We have label sets that we can choose and right click and choose edit. Or we can come down and edit our individual labels, like for major station and minor station. In our final demonstration, we're going to create an FDOT station offset elevation label style using what's known as an object reference text component. As you can see here in the screen grab, we are referencing an alignment and labeling a point in our drawing, displaying the station with station text with offset text, and elevation with elevation text. So in our label that we're about to compose, we're using station offset from an alignment where we're also using elevation based off of a surface. So let's go over to our settings tab and we're going to find the surface category. In the surface category, we're going to choose label styles and then go over to spot elevation because we're labeling a spot elevation in our contour, in our label. And we're going to choose standard because what we're going to do is we're going to use this standard label style to base our new style off of. So I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to choose copy. So I want to copy that style to make a new one. Again, the label style composer is displayed. On the information tab, let's give our new style a name. I'm going to call it station offset elevation, and I'll put example at the end of it. The next step we want to do is to go to our general tab and apply an FDOT text style to it because we want to adhere to the FDOT standard. So for text style, I'm going to click on the value box and click on the dice icon next to it. Once I click on that, I'm going to choose FDOT and click OK. We also want to make sure that when we create our labels that they go in the proper layer. So for layer, I'm going to choose the value column. I'll go ahead and click on the dice icon and we're going to put this on the text elevation label. And click OK. Next, we want to take a look at our components and examine how they're being anchored in the label style. So if I go to layout, you can see that under component name, we have two components. We have one component for surface elevation and we have one component for station and offset. So let's start with the surface elevation component. When we apply the surface elevation label, our anchor point, we want it to anchor to the bottom left of our label. The contents of our surface elevation label can be changed and altered by going to the text area for content and click on the value box. Once we do that, we get a text component editor. For the text component editor, under properties, you can click on it and change the name, description, surface elevation, northern, eastern, so forth and so on. So to change this, I'm going to currently select what I have in here and click delete to delete it out of our preview box. I want the text elevation to show up at the beginning of my label. So I'm going to type in EL, the period, with a space. Now for my properties, I'm going to choose surface elevation and then I'm going to modify some of the values. So we do want our units to show in feet and we're going to change our precision here to 0.1. Rounding, we can look at for round normal, decimal character for period, digit group symbol, we'll leave it at comma, digit grouping is fine, sign, negative, and output is full. So once you've modified the values, come over here to the top right and you'll click on the arrow to apply those values to your preview box. Once you've made these changes, go ahead and click OK, and this brings you back to your label style composer. Finally, for the text itself, for our attachment, we want to change the attachment to top left. You can see how it shifts down and shows the top left of the attachment anchoring itself to the bottom left of our style. For our component name, we have a station and offset already defined. But let's go and delete it and see how to start one from scratch because we want to create a station offset based off of an alignment. So I'm going to click on that X to delete it. And I'm going to go over here to this create text component icon and click on the down arrow and I want to choose reference text. Reference text allows me to create text referenced off of an object in Civil 3D. Because we want to do station and offset, we're going to choose the alignment option and click OK. Notice that for our component name, it's just called reference text.1. Let's give it something that we can understand a little bit more easy. Let's call this station and offset. For the attachment of this text, let's choose bottom left. Notice in the preview how it changes. You can also move your mouse in the preview area and pan around like you would in model space to give you a little bit better view of your label style that you're composing. Next, we want to change is the contents of our text for our station offset label. So for contents, I'm going to come up here for label text and again click on the dice icon. This brings me back to my text component editor. Again, I'm going to highlight what's currently in there and press delete. So let's add a text component of station value to our label. So for properties, I'm going to click on the down arrow and locate station value. Before I add the station value to my component, I'm going to come over here to the right and type in STA for station, period, and then space, and then add my station value. The next property we're going to add is our offset. So again, click on the properties pull down menu, choose offset, come over to your preview window on the right. I'm going to go down one line and type in OFF for offset, period, and a space. And again, I'm going to add that property to my text component. Alright, so now that we're done with that, I'm going to go ahead and click OK to go back to our label style composer. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to change some of the drag state properties. As I drag my label away from its original position, I want the components of my label to remain the same. So under drag state components for display, under stack text, I'm going to choose as composed because I want my label to stay as is composed when it's being removed from its original location. You can also see up here on the top that we'll also get a leader with a closed field arrowhead style, and then we have a 0.1 for the arrowhead size. We do want the leader visible, so to the right we have true selected. For the type of leader, we have a straight leader. If we want to do a spline leader, we have that option to choose from and also. Finally, if you want to review some of your settings all in one tab, you can go over to the Summary tab. You can see that we have two components that we've assigned to our label. We have component 1, which is the surface elevation. We have component 2, which is station and offset. On the Information tab, we have station, offset, and elevation. The label itself is using an FDOT text style. The label is visible, and the layer is going to the text elevation label layer. For the behavior, it is orientated to the object that's being labeled. And our drag state components we chose as composed. So again, the Summary tab is just kind of a one-stop shop to make all your settings on one layout tab. I recommend using this tab once you get more familiar with how the label style composer works. So now that we're done composing our label, let's go ahead and go to the bottom. We'll click Apply to apply all of our settings and click OK to close out of the dialog box. Next, what we want to do is we want to label this building pad with our station, offset, and elevation label. So to do that, again, I'm going to go to the Annotate tab and choose Add Labels. I'm going to start from the top and work my way down. For the feature that we want to label, we're going to click on the down arrow and choose Surface. For our label type, we're going to choose Spot Elevation. For our spot elevation label style, I'm going to click on the down arrow and find my station offset elevation dash example. If you want a marker placed at your label, you can choose different marker styles. We have an FDOT marker provided for you. Next, simply choose Add. Once you choose Add at the command line, notice this is telling you just to select a point that you want to label in your drawing. I'm just going to come up here to my corner of my building and do a shift right click endpoint to place my label. Once I right click, notice that it's asking me what alignment do I want this label to be based off of, or reference, because I used reference text in my label style. Well, Civil 3D automatically notices that I only have one alignment in my drawing, so I could just pick it and then click OK. Notice that once I click OK, the rest of our labels are filled out. At the command line, I can continue to pick points on my drawing to place additional labels. Once I'm done placing my labels, right click in the command. Remember, in our label style composer, we also made some drag state settings that when we drag our label away from its original point, that the label remained as composed, and we also got a leader line to appear with it. So if I select my label, I have grips that come up. I can select the blue grip, square grip, and move it away from its original location. Notice as I move it, I do get my arrowhead leader line to appear. If you want to place the label back to its original location, move your cursor over the grip and you get a shortcut menu. Here we can choose Reset Label Location. That concludes my session on FDOT Civil 3D labeling. If you have any questions or if you have comments to improve your experience, please email me at mike.rocca@dot.state.fl.us.